ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont, and today's story we're going to have a little bit about the ongoing battle that has been the video game historians versus pretty much all of gaming and the DMCA. For those of you that don't know, there's an organization that's been trying to get retro games set up for libraries to digitally rent to people. So, apologize about that. My cat came in. So historians could have access to these and study these games. They have a long statement about it on their website. But it doesn't matter because it's been struck down. And we got the breaking news. Well, not really breaking. It was broken by Games Radar. Let's get into this article. Publishers are absolutely terrified. Preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. So the U.S. Copyright Office has struck down a major effort for game preservation. When you purchase through links on our site, we may earn affiliated... No, that's an ad. A 3-year fight to help support game preservation has come to a sad end today. The U.S. Copyright Office has denied a request for a DMCA exemption that would allow libraries to remotely share digital access to preserved video games. For the past 3 years, the Video Game History Foundation has been supported with Software Preservation Network, a petition to allow libraries and archives to remotely share digital access to out-of-print video games in their collections. VGHF explains in its statement, under the current anti-circumvention rules in Section 1201 of the DMCA, libraries and archives are unable to break copy protection on games in order to make them remotely accessible to researchers. Essentially, this exemption would open up the possibility of a digital library where historians and researchers could check out digital games that run through emulators. The VGHF argues that around 87% of all video games released in the U.S. before 2010 are now out of print, and the only legal way to access those games now is through the occasionally exorbitant prices and often failing hardware that defines the retro gaming market. I gotta pause real quick. That's insulting. Most old gaming hardware is pretty stable and has so far stood the test of time, or withstood the test of time, I should say, with the exception of the 3DO, the Dreamcast. I don't know how well Sega Saturns hold up. I don't own one, but most retro game consoles are durable as hell. I was gonna say indestructible. That's not true, but they are very, very tough. They last forever. They're easy to clean, easy to repair. Saying that they're often failing is just a misrepresentation of the truth. Still, the U.S. Copyright Office has said no. The Register concludes that proponents did not show that removing the single-use limitation for preserved computer programs or permitting off-premises access to video games are likely to be non-infringing, according to the final ruling. She also notes that greater risk of market harm with removing the video game exemptions premises limitation, given the market for legacy video games. I mean, she's kind of right. The ruling cites the belief of the Entertainment Software Association and other industry lobby groups that there would be a significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. We cannot, of course, entertain the notion that researchers enjoy their subjects for even a moment. More importantly, this also ignores the fact that libraries already lend out digital versions of more traditional media like books and movies to everyday people for what can only be described as recreational purposes. Members of the VGHF are naturally unhappy with the decision. Unfortunately, lobbying efforts by rights holders groups continue to hold back progress, the group says in its statement, noting that ESA's absolutist position that it would not support a similar sort of copyright reform under any circumstance. Oh, shit. Man. Thank you. I want to read that real quick, but we'll finish this article up. It's almost done. I'm proud of the work we and the orgs we partnered with did to try and change copyright law. VGHF founder and director Frank Kifaldi says on Twitter, it's called X now, we really gave it our all. I can't see what else we could have done. This fails the needs of citizens in favor of a weak sauce argument from the industry, and it's really disappointing. See, there's your mistake right there, buddy, is you said that you're trying to do it for citizens, not, researchers. Language is important when it comes to law. If you're going to fight for researchers to have access to video games for free through a digital library, you need to always use the phrase researchers or scientists or engineers, things like that. You can't say citizens. You can't say the people, because if you give free access to video games to everybody, it will be exploited. It will be used for recreational purposes. Although I always thought libraries were for recreational purposes. Like, nobody goes to the library and checks out Moby Dick because they want to genuinely learn about whaling. They probably would just research whaling as a subject on its own. There's books about like Nantucket other than Moby Dick. Moby Dick is just but one of the books. I know that's an offhand reference, but like, I always use the library for recreational purposes. You go there, you can log into the internet with your library card. You can check out books to read at your leisure, or however you want to pronounce the word. The point is, it is a recreational thing. It's not like on a fixed research purpose institution. So, I don't know why they were trying to do... Well, I know why they were trying to do this. This kind of language is probably what dead-ended it, what killed it, what buried it, what caused the judge to issue her ruling. Because, like I said, language is important in the court of law. Everything you say has meaning. And if you're not very precise and exact with what you say for what you mean, it can be interpreted openly, and then once judges make their own interpretations, if they don't agree with it, you're going to have to go to a higher court. And I seriously doubt the Supreme Court is going to even entertain the idea of digital video game, not even rentals, checking them out for research purposes. Because, unless they create an entire class of, research card holders, like you must be a researcher, you must prove you're a researcher to get the research card, then you can check out these kind of things. But that's a whole separate entity in of itself. Now let's see what this other similar copyright law is. The ESA says its members won't support the one form of game preservation that might actually work. The Entertainment Software Association, the big trade organization for the video game industry in the U.S., says it's fully opposed to a proposed copyright exemption that would allow gaming scholars to access online libraries of preserved games. Preservationists have been arguing for an exemption like this for some time, and last week they presented their argument to the U.S. Copyright Office. As Video Game History Foundation put it, this exemption would make it easier, stuff we're just talking about. The preservation organizations want a great deal of discretion over how they handle very valuable intellectual property, he said in the hearing. So, the issue is they weren't trying to gain access to intellectual property. They were trying to gain access to the physical games themselves. I don't think it was about seizing IPs. It was just about being able to research games. And when you come to game researchers, most researchers who study games, they're not studying like the actual like lore or the stories or the recreational parts. They're studying the function, the programming, how things operate on a code-based level, which some of them are probably still retained by copyright, and that might be what their defense was, but others are well into the open realm. And, it all comes down to the judge. It's what it came down to. The judge was like, nah, I don't think this is worded properly, I think people are going to abuse this system, and I don't think it's going to pass. Here's the actual ruling. Summary judgment right here. In the final rule, the Library of Congress adopts exemptions to the provisions of the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, the DMCA, that prohibits circumvention of technological measures that control access to copyrighted works. As required under the statute, the Register of Copyrights, following a public proceeding, submitted and recommended to the Library of Congress regarding proposed exemption. After careful consideration, the librarian adopts final regulations based on the Register's recommendation. For further information, contact supplementary. The Librarian of Congress, pursuant to Section 1201-A-1 of Article 17, United States Code, has determined that its ninth triennial rulemaking proceeding that the prohibition against circumvention of technological measures that effectively control access to copyrighted works shall not apply for the next 3 years to persons who engage in certain non-infringing uses of specified classes of such works. The determination is based on the Register's recommendation. This is heavy in legal speak, and I'm not going to bore you with this whole thing. I will post a link in the description of this video to this, so anyone that wants to read the actual ruling themselves will have access to it. But there you go. The Video Game Historical Act, or whatever, video game historians failed in their attempt this go around. I don't think that means the fight is over. I think they're going to probably keep battling for this. They just need to get the correct wording and the correct legal ease, as it were, and they might have to take it to a higher court. It also depends on what happens with the copyright rulings with Congress that they should be making next year in 2025, because I believe the copyrights are up for review, and whether or not they continue with the current laws, repeal them, set new laws, go back to the original laws, that's all up in the air right now. So things could change heavily, as it were. We just don't know yet. Really depends on what happens with Congress and who Disney's lobbying, because Disney is pretty much behind the vast majority of our current copyright laws. But that's all I have for this video. Belmont out.